Gone are the days of believing that the only thing that makes you wealthy is the money sitting in your bank account and or how you are doing financially, because let's be honest, that is only one tiny portion of what makes life so rich. And on today's episode of That's So Rich, we're going to be diving into redefining wealth in 2025 so that you can live a life that is genuinely holistically rich, not just rich monetarily. What's up, and welcome to the That's So Rich podcast, the show that's redefining wealth and helping you manifest a life that is rich in every single way. I'm your host, Kat Kozad, transformation coach, manifestation expert, and spiritual guide, and together we're going to create your happiest, healthiest, and wealthiest life. I'm so happy you're here. Let's do this thing. What's up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of That's So Rich. I hope that everybody's 2025 is off to an incredible start. I don't know if anybody else is feeling a really interesting shift collectively in the energy compared to the past few New Years, but I'm feeling a completely different energy than I have in the past, where at least for my own experience and a lot of people that I've talked to, there's less force this New Year's. There's less intense goal setting and being very strict, being very rigid, kind of like I talked about in my last podcast episode with this, like trying to overhaul your entire life in the span of a day, a week, a month, and then inevitably failing at that because that's way too intense. And more so this really deep, really integrated, embodied energy of just confidence in the fact that what is meant for you is going to manifest, that or something greater, of knowing yourself, of trusting that you know what work needs to be done. If there's inner work, if there's healing, if there's different things that are necessary in order for you to get to that place, and less of this like structure, rigid, forceful, unsupportive energy of like needing to get shit done in a certain way. And I absolutely love it because all of the work that I've done on myself over the past few years have led me to that place for myself where I'm like, oh yeah, no, I'm not playing by other people's rule books, and I am going to do things in the way that feel best to me and really trust in the fact that best case scenario gets to be the inevitable for my life, that everything is working out in my favor. And that doesn't mean that I'm being complacent. That doesn't mean that I'm being lazy. It's just knowing that the inherent motivation, the inherent inspiration to take action and get shit done and live an aligned and fulfilling life is something that is actually so intuitive to us. If we cut out all of the noise, it's actually what remains at the end of the day. And I feel like a lot of people are experiencing that. So if you're experiencing that, love that for you. If you're not experiencing that, that's okay too. And I want you to know that it's possible through everything that I talk about here on the podcast, as well as whether you choose to join a coaching program or just pursue your own healing or your own connection to your intuition, your spirituality, your faith in whatever way. I believe we are all inevitably like led home to ourselves. So with that being said, in my opinion, 2025 is off to an incredible start. And like y'all know, I rebranded the podcast from the No Bullshit Manifestation Show to That's So Rich back in September of 2024. And the main reason for that was because I was ready for a new energy, and the original brand, name, image, message of the podcast was no longer working for me. I took, I'd say like 4 or 5 months off of the podcast last year to really just reassess and question and understand what direction I wanted to take things moving forward. And a big reason for that being is because the podcast kind of turned into this how-to show of like how to manifest this, how to heal this, how to do this thing, how to XYZ. And it was very much so me teaching from my perspective, like kind of like, here's my rule book and take my rule book and run with it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I think that looking into and seeing other people's rule books or how they've done things can be really helpful for us sometimes. But ultimately, while yes, I am a life coach, I am a manifestation coach, I've helped hundreds of people heal and transform their lives with the power of intentional manifestation and all of these things that we talk about on the podcast, I don't have all of the answers at the end of the day. And I never want to position myself as the person who does. And instead, I want to be the kind of person who gets to walk alongside you and discover it with you and show you that you don't have to have all of the answers to live a rich life. You don't have to heal all of your limiting beliefs to live a rich life. You don't have to be this unrealistic, higher self, perfect version of yourself in order to live a rich life. And in fact, that's one of the things that makes life so rich in and of itself. And so one of the biggest shifts that's happened for me over the past 6 to 12 months is really being able to step more so into that role of, well, yes, absolutely, I am a coach. I have courses, I have programs, I have all of these things that work so incredibly well to help you transform your life and help you manifest what it is that you want into your life. But at the end of the day, I can never tell you how to live a rich life. I can't tell you how you are supposed to do something because that's something that you're here to discover through your own experiences and through your own trial and error and what you like, what you don't like, all of this intuitive and internal information that lives inside of you. And the only thing that I can do is share my experience, and you will know if that lands within you. So all of that to say that I'm really excited for today's podcast episode because it fits in with the reason that I rebranded this podcast in the first place, which was to talk about wealth, to talk about living a rich life, to talk about what it means to redefine wealth from how wealth has been positioned for most of us, I would say majority of us throughout our entire lives, as the numbers in your bank account, as the money that you were receiving on your paycheck or the sales that you were bringing in through your business, about what your net worth is, about what stocks and bonds and investments and all of these different things that you have. And it's not to shit on money because y'all know I love money, and I will always talk about the importance that money plays in our lives and how important it is to have a healed relationship with money so that you actually can have an enjoyable and freeing experience with the physical manifestation of money. Because oftentimes that is the thing that holds us back from feeling like we are rich in the first place, is not so much the actual money that you have in your bank account and or the amount of money that you're receiving on a monthly, weekly, whatever basis, but more so the internal relationship that you have with money. But in today's podcast episode, we're moving past that and we're talking about redefining wealth as a whole, redefining what it means to be rich as a whole. Because this has hands down been one of the most important and transformative aspects of my life over the past 5 years. Because before actually starting my intentional manifestation journey and starting to do the healing work and starting my business and all of the things that I have over the past few years, I had this belief that money was the thing that would make me happier. I grew up in a family where we struggled financially a lot of the times. I saw my parents living paycheck to paycheck. There were some really tough decisions that had to be made in terms of what we could have, what we couldn't have. I saw my parents max out their credit cards multiple times growing up, and just the stress that money brought upon my family. And because of that, there were so many limiting beliefs and money traumas that were formed that led me to believe that the only thing that would make me happier, or the thing that would solve almost all of my problems, was being financially free or being in a position that I was making a fuck ton of money. And when I got out of working in the food and beverage industry and was capped by how much I could make, and started my own business and entered into this realm where I'm completely uncapped by how much I can make. It's really just dependent on my belief system and healing that relationship with money. I then hustled my ass off to make a fuck ton of money. And you guys have heard me tell the story many times about making my first $100,000 within 10 months of starting the business. And that was so important to me because growing up, I saw families that were making six figures a year, and it seemed like those families didn't have any issues. So I had this subconscious belief that once I was making six figures, these pearly white gates would open, all of my problems would go away, and everything would be better. I would feel rich, I would feel worthy, I would feel XYZ, all of these beautiful feelings that I thought could only come from money, only to hit that mark and realize that nothing had changed internally. None of these problems had gone away. And in fact, I actually was feeling exponentially worse because the pressure that I was putting on money didn't change anything, which at the time felt devastating because I had put so much pressure on the fact that money was going to be the thing that changed things for me. But looking back on that, that was the end of 2020. That was actually when it felt like my real healing journey began. That feels like where my real connection to understanding myself and loving myself and working through these limiting beliefs and traumas that I was holding on to in relation to myself and the way that I perceived myself really started to happen, as well as that's when I realized that no amount of money was ever going to bring me the level of fulfillment that I thought it was going to. And because I was lacking that sense of fulfillment inside of myself, it was this opportunity to start to understand like what was going to fill that and what needed to happen internally, as well as in my relationship to the universe, God, source, spirit, to be able to feel that sense of wholeness inside of myself, to actually live a holistic life and not just this off balance one where all of my focus is going into making as much money as I possibly can, but not paying attention to the other aspects of my life. And so through then doing a lot of somatic healing, a lot of inner child work, a lot of connecting to my faith, and just spending more time with my intuition and like taking care of all aspects of myself, mind, body, soul, I found that making and manifesting money can be so much easier, so much more aligned, and doesn't have to be this like constant hustle and grind like I thought it had to be growing up based off of what I witnessed from my parents. And as a byproduct of that, I started to make more money than I ever had in the past. And without knowing, I was attaching so much of my worth and so much of what I deemed as like why I'm a good person, why I'm a good friend, why I deserve things, so on and so forth, on the fact that I was making more money than I ever had before. And it wasn't until this past 2 years, 2023, 2024, where I experienced my first dip in making money over the past few years, that I was actually met with all of the shadows and a whole new layer of inner work and limiting beliefs and traumas that I've had the opportunity to now work through, where before, when I was making more money than I ever had before, I could easily say like, oh yeah, I'm fine with or without, like I'm good. I have this level of detachment surrounding money. Whereas when I was actually put into the position, I talked about this a few podcast episodes ago, where my business essentially came to a complete standstill for a few months in 2024, and there wasn't as much money as I was used to coming in, that I was met with that shit that was living inside of me. And it may sound really weird, but I'm so freaking grateful for the fact that it did happen. And I'm so freaking grateful for the fact that I get to share about it and talk about it, because it's such a real thing that so many people go through. And it's such a real thing for me that I went through, where there wasn't this level of awareness of how much money was actually still controlling me and controlling my life. as opposed to me being able to sit in that driver's seat or even in the passenger seat and trust that like God is driving the car and that I'm going through exactly what I'm meant to go through, and that it doesn't impact my worthiness, and it doesn't mean that I'm doing things wrong or bad or that I fucked up in some sort of way. It's really all just a learning opportunity. And the greatest gift that those few months gave me is being able to redefine wealth for myself and see the worthiness, the richness, the goodness that is a part of my life, even when things do not look the way that I want them to financially. And honestly, I feel like it could have been a time where I like retracted and retreated into myself and went back to who I was in the past. It actually was like a metamorphosis moment for me to be able to bust into and become more of me and to explore in new ways in my life, in my finances, in my business, in just like the way in which I carry myself on a day-to-day basis. And like I said, that all comes back to the fact that wealth is not defined by the numbers in your bank account or how you are doing financially. That is one tiny portion of it. Wealth is defined by you. Wealth is defined by all of the other aspects of your life that make you feel as though you are the richest girl on planet Earth. You are the richest person on planet Earth. And that's what I'm here to talk about because, again, I know I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but our world, especially the US, has such an obsession with financial success, financial wellness, financial everything. And oftentimes that's the only thing that somebody thinks about when they're thinking about riches, when they're thinking about what it means to be wealthy. And there's almost like this over identification with what you do for work and thinking that that's your purpose, that's what gives you value. And because of that giving you your value, then that means that's what makes you either rich or not rich. And I actually saw this Instagram post the other day and I shared it to my story, so some of you may have seen it. I put, "Hi, my name is Kat and I drink matcha" underneath it because essentially in the Instagram reel, it was some guys who went to, I forget what country, it was some European country, and they're having a conversation with somebody who worked at a coffee shop or somebody at a coffee shop, and the person asked them like what they were doing and why they were there, and they told them that they were videographers, they made films, so on and so forth. And they asked back, "What do you do?" And the person said, "I play tennis." And their immediate reaction to it was, "Oh my gosh, you're a professional tennis player?" And that person was like, "No, I'm not a professional tennis player. Like, that's what I do. I play tennis. I love tennis. Tennis is the thing that makes me feel so good about life. That's one of the things that makes me feel so rich." They didn't use that exact verbiage, but that was the message that I got from it. And there's just such this obsession and, like I said, over-identification with our careers and what makes us money here in the United States, especially here in New York City. One of the craziest fucking things about living in New York City is oftentimes when you meet people, there's like 3 questions you're asked that people size you up with, which is, what do you do? Where do you live? And how much do you pay for rent? And when I then say that I'm a life coach, I live in this specific area of Manhattan and I pay over $5,000 a month for rent, people look at me with value. They look at me like, "Oh wow, okay, cool. This chick deserves a place in the room because of that status, because of that value," when in reality it's like somebody could be living in the exact same circumstances or be paying more for rent than I am and actually feel so poor. They actually feel like their life doesn't hold a lot of value or a lot of richness. And again, that's crazy to me that we can look at somebody and ask them these defining questions of what do you do for work, where do you live, and how much do you pay for rent, or what is your mortgage, or how much do you make a year, or whatever it is, and determine somebody's value based on that, when that is the smallest and oftentimes some of the most insignificant details about that person. Something so much more interesting that you could ask that person is, what is their favorite thing to do? Or what's their favorite childhood memory? What games did they like to play as a kid? What inspires them? What's their favorite kind of dessert or anything else? Favorite TV show? Because I can tell you that, at least from my perspective, that's going to tell you so much more about a person than asking them what their job is, where they live, and how much they pay for rent. So, quick little side note, because I think that's fucking crazy, and I refuse to be that person in New York City that asks those questions, because I don't fucking care where you live. I don't care how much money you make. I don't care how much you pay for rent. Maybe I care about what you do, especially if you're passionate about it, but those aren't the things that make you rich. Those are just a teeny tiny aspect of your life. And so all of that to say, I think that we're entering a time, if not have already been in this time, but are all kind of waking up to and accepting the fact that being financially wealthy is no longer cutting it as a definition for wealth or being rich. And instead, we're moving into, or are already in, this era where wealth is determined by the quality of life that you have. And again, that quality of life not being directly related to where you live, how much you pay for rent, the things that you have, but more so your internal state and how that shines through into your life. And so I like to think about wealth and richness in a holistic way. Holistic wealth to me means wealth as a whole, not just as one aspect. That's your health, that's your relationships, that's the food that you eat and how much you enjoy that food. That's the environment that you choose to live in, or the travels that you go on, the way that you venture through your day-to-day life. That's your career, and loving that career, letting it be a soul-led thing. And or if it's something that you don't love, being okay with the fact that that's just a small aspect of your life and not something that you need to put so much pressure on. That's your connection to your faith, to your spirituality, to what that means to you and how it fills your life. That's your sense of self, and having a deep sense of self, because that's truly where this wholeness comes from. And then, yes, of course, that's actually your finances too, but it's recognizing that holistic means whole. It's not just one aspect, it's the whole thing. That's like, in the US, and I mean the Western world as a whole, they like to kind of like separate things, where it's like you go to the doctor if you have foot pain and look at your foot. Whereas in the East, if you have foot pain, they're going to look at all of these other things because they're more focused on holistic health. It's looking at yourself and as your life as one giant organism, where it's not just focusing on little different aspects and thinking that that is the most important one. It's looking at your life as a whole and seeing the importance of nurturing yourself in every single area, because that's, at least in my opinion, where true wealth comes from. For example, for me in my life, one of the things that makes me feel like the richest girl in the world, but doesn't cost a single cent, is humor. And my sense of humor in particular, which I want to bring so much more of to the content that I produce, whether it be here on the podcast or over on Instagram and TikTok, because that's one of my favorite things about myself. The way that I can lighten up a room and bring laughter to situations, the way that my friends react to me when I say something funny, and just the fact that that's like an inherent part of me. Humor makes me feel like the richest girl in the world. Another thing that makes me feel so fucking rich is the ability to change my mind. Y'all, if you know me, if you've listened to the podcast over the past few years, you will know that I change my mind all the time. And the fact that I have the ability to do so makes me feel so fucking rich. But if you were to look at the old, outdated definition of what it means to be rich, that wouldn't fall into it. And that's exactly what I'm talking about here, is that we're redefining what it gets to mean for you to be rich in 2025 and beyond. Because also with it being January, also with it still being the first week of the new year, I can imagine so many of you have laid out the budget, laid out the plan, been very strict with your money, you're having no spend months, or whatever it is that is based off of that old definition. And it probably feels really restrictive to you. It probably feels really shitty in that your quality of life is actually being impacted right now in a way that doesn't feel good. And this isn't to shit on money. That isn't to shit on your budget. That isn't to shit on the plan. But it's being able to actually check in with what your values are. What are your values? And if you weren't trying to meet some sort of standard that society has placed on you, what would you do differently? What would be different for you? What would you see that currently isn't working for you that you're trying to do anyways to maintain this old definition of wealth? And just reiterating, this isn't to shit on money or to shit on any of those structures or systems that are in place that actually do work for you. And I love money. It has been one of the most valuable tools in my life to get me to where I am today, and continues to allow me to experience more and more of this human experience. And I think that you looking and redefining what wealth means to you, it's not actually deterring you or moving you further away from that financial freedom or that financial independence or those financial goals that you have for yourself. I think what you'll find is it actually moves you closer to it, because when you are experiencing that deep sense of wealth in all aspects of your life and you're feeling holistically rich, that's the energy that manifests and attracts more money or more opportunities into your life that allows you to have the kind of money and the financial freedom that you're wanting. And one of my favorite things that I ever read by one of my favorite authors, or at least favorite authors for personal development books, because I'm not a big personal development book girly, and I think I've said that on the podcast before, but that may come as a surprise to some of you. I actually don't really like self-help books, and I don't really like personal development books because, again, I don't like to be told what to do. And that's why I don't want to tell you guys what to do, because you tell me what to do and I will do the absolute fucking opposite. I don't know if that's the Aquarius in me or something else, but one of the things that I have enjoyed from one of the very few personal development books that I've read has been from Jen Sincero, who wrote the books You Are a Badass and You Are a Badass at Making Money. She also wrote some other books about like kissing girls. I think it was like a straight girl's guide to kissing girls, which like, fuck yeah, sis, pop off. If you want to go kiss those girls and read about how you can be a straight girl and kiss girls, do it, because everything's fluid, right? But in the book, You Are a Badass at Making Money, she says a thing that she's like, this is going to trigger most of you, but is absolutely true, that in order to live life to the fullest, you have to have a fuck ton of money, which means that in order for you to live life to the fullest, you owe it to yourself to get stupidly rich. And the first time I read that, it did trigger me, because I was like, whoa, that's crazy. She's putting even more pressure on the importance of money and the need to make a ton of money. But the more that I've worked through my relationship with money and the more that I've manifested money into my life, I couldn't agree more. I think that you being in pursuit of being the most financially abundant version of yourself is one of the most important things that you can do for yourself, because when you increase in one area, it gives you the capacity to increase in all of the other areas of your life. So the more that you love yourself, the more you have the capacity to make more money. The more that you work on your communication style and the relationships that you have and the past traumas that you've held surrounding those relationships, the more it increases your capacity to manifest more money. The more you work on your relationship to money and the work that you do and the way in which you can bring money into your life, the more that increases the richness that you have in the sense of adventure that you can have, or the places that you can live, or whatever it may be. It's not one or the other. It's all of it. And that's what holistic wealth is. That's what redefining wealth, to see it as it's not just money, it's all of it. And when you work on one, you're inevitably working on the other, because it's all intertwined. It's all entangled. And that's so beautiful. That's one of the things that when people come on board for the Abundant AF Babe Academy, I always say is it's not just looking at your relationship with money and bringing that relationship with money to the highest possible point that we can, and not looking at the other areas. It's looking at all aspects of your life and bringing them up to that high vibrational level, because without doing that, you create an energetic imbalance. And eventually what happens with an energetic imbalance is that everything comes crashing and burning back down to the level that the lowest thing is at. And I don't say that to scare you. I say that to inspire you, because ultimately, again, when you are becoming the richest version of yourself, not just financially, but in mind, body, and soul, in your relationships, in the things that align with your values, in the things that bring you that deep sense of alignment and fulfillment, then that is naturally going to help all of the other aspects. And it's that invitation to look at those areas of your life that perhaps right now you may be avoiding, because by looking at those things, you're only creating more space for more abundance. And so for myself, I believe that we're all inherently worthy, and we're all inherently capable of becoming more monetarily wealthy, no matter where you're starting from. For example, I come from next to nothing on the financial front, and I believe that it's part of my path in this lifetime to break free of the generational curse of poverty in my family and become like rich. Like, you know how people say fuck you money? It's kind of like fuck you money, but like not fuck you, and more so like come the fuck on and join me. Because again, I think this is all of us, and the richer that I become, the richer you become. That's how this works. It's not me getting rich takes wealth away from everybody else. The richer I get, the richer you get, especially because you're listening to the That's So Rich podcast. But because of this, I do my part to break that cycle. I educate myself. I put myself in the position to manifest more money than I could have ever imagined growing up, because I know that that's what's necessary in order for me to live life to the fullest and to give my soul the experience that it came to this human body and incarnated into my human body to have in the first place. But I also believe that in the process of getting stupidly rich, it's about noticing how rich you already are and not just being so obsessed with getting to that end destination of receiving and being in that place that you want to be financially. And that once you're in the place that you want to be financially, where you're so much more financially free or successful than you have been in the past, that it's not just the money that makes you rich. It's just one component of the puzzle. And it's a never-ending puzzle that just keeps adding new layers and new colors and new experiences to it. And personally, that's one of the things that makes me feel so rich, is the fact that even if I try to figure out what things are going to look like, or how things are going to happen, or what's necessary in order for me to reach those new levels of wealth inside of myself, I will never be able to do so. And knowing that God is going to constantly keep surprising me with new layers that make life richer and richer. So all of this to say, I encourage you to take a moment to pause today and to question your current definition of wealth and what makes you wealthy, and start to redefine what wealth means for you in 2025 and beyond. And this is actually a question that I asked on my Instagram earlier today. I asked, what's the thing that makes y'all feel rich without spending a single cent? What are the things that money can't buy that makes you feel incredibly rich? As well as what are the things that money can buy that make you feel incredibly rich? Because both are incredible. Both are good. Both are the things that we are looking for. It's not one or the other. It's no more this or that. It's an and. It's both of these things. So just a few things that y'all said over on Instagram is the people in it. That was majority of the answers that I got, was some sort of variation of people, the people in your life, the people that you love, female friendships, your home and the roof over your head, being able to give gifts to other people, your pets, getting to relax after a hard day of work, new clothes and wearing things that make you feel fierce, being surrounded by other people, the changing of seasons, not only in nature, but also inside of yourself and getting to witness it. Going out for dinners, trying new foods, random texts or phone calls from the people that you love, being in nature, not worrying about money or how much something costs, cherishing the moment while you're in it, going to concerts, and so many other things. And receiving all of these messages on Instagram about these things that make you feel rich made me so fucking happy because, again, you feeling that wealth, you feeling that richness from your experiences, that only makes me richer. And the things that make me rich only make you richer. It's not one of us winning, one of us losing. There's only a win-win here. And we're only moving on up and forward together when we choose to share the wealth monetarily and in ideas, in experiences, in energy. So when we all stop and think about it, we are all already rich at the end of the day. And when you feel that deep internal sense of richness, like I said earlier, that's when you start to manifest more and more of the external richness that comes in the form of money and or other opportunities. And that's how this whole manifestation thing works in the first place. When you want for nothing because you already feel that deep sense of richness inside of yourself and you feel good where you are with or without the money or the next level thing that you're wanting, you actually feel that deep sense of richness here and now, then you receive everything. When you want for nothing, you receive everything. So acknowledge your life and how rich you already are. And I promise you, even in the moments where you're broke as fuck, there's no money in your bank account, there's still so many things to make you feel rich. That is what I believe redefining wealth in 2025 is. That's what I believe is going to help us be the happiest, healthiest, and wealthiest versions of ourselves in mind, body, soul, and bank account. So that's what I have for you on today's podcast episode. I hope that you loved it. And if you did, please let me know over on Instagram. Please share this with somebody that you think could benefit from hearing this episode, hearing this conversation. And you can find the link to my Instagram down below in the show notes. If you don't already follow me, please do. Getting to connect with all of you and hear that you enjoy the podcast episode is genuinely one of the things that makes me feel like the richest girl on planet Earth. I got a few messages over the past few weeks from some of you who either just started listening to the podcast or have listened basically since day one and just haven't reached out before. And seriously, guys, you have no clue how much that brightens my day and that we actually can have a conversation then. So please reach out to me. I would love to chat with you over on Instagram and go redefine what wealth means to you. I promise you, by doing this, you're going to start to feel so much richer. And until the next time, I am sending you all of my love and we'll chat soon.